My reflection stared back at me, a stranger in a tailored suit. Jillian Matthews, rising star at TradeSync Solutions. 2 years ago, I'd have choked on the title. 2 years ago, I still believed in everything. Family, loyalty, love. Now, I just believe in getting the job done. Life, that bitch, has a way of kicking you in the teeth when you're busy making plans. I was good at my job, damn good, but that gaping hole, that insistent whisper that I was supposed to be settled, it gnawed at me. Late 20s, career on track, and utterly, devastatingly alone. My family was complicated. Mom, Dad, and Marcus, my older brother. Marcus was always the sun in their sky. And I was just the moon reflecting his brilliance. 2 years older, 2 steps ahead, twice as charming. We grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, the kind of suburb where everyone pretends to be happy, even when they're dying inside. Marcus and we fought like cats and dogs, but I thought we had each other's backs. He was the golden boy, the charmer, the one who could talk his way out of anything. I was the responsible one, the planner, the one who actually did things. Our parents? They practically worshipped him. I had learned to live with it. It was just how it was. Then came Tom. I met him at Jenny's housewarming, the kind of party where the wine is cheap, the cheese is rubbery, and everyone's desperately trying to make a connection. He wasn't flashy. No loud jokes, no boisterous flirting. Just a quiet intensity, dark hair that fell just so over his eyes, a smile that made you feel like you were sharing a secret. We bonded over true crime podcasts, of all things. Hours melted away. He saw me, or at least, that's what I thought. Numbers exchanged. Daily texts. The first date, a tiny Italian place downtown. We talked until the staff practically dragged us out. Second, third, fourth dates. Soon, weekends bled into each other. He was different, more mature. He said he wanted the same things I did. 6 months in, we were talking about moving in. He had a stable job, a software sales. The potential was there. We were both savers, both focused on the future. On paper, we were perfect. I was almost giddy. Was this it? Was I finally going to get my happily ever after? 1 year. That's all it took. 1 year to build a castle, and another to watch it crumble to dust. Our anniversary, back at that same Italian restaurant. He was a mess of nervous energy, fumbling with his water glass, checking his phone every 5 minutes. Then, dessert arrived. He was kneeling, a velvet box in his hand. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would explode. "Jillian," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "will you marry me?" I barely heard myself say yes. The ring was perfect. Simple, elegant, me. The restaurant erupted in applause. I felt weightless. Stupidly, blissfully weightless. The weekend after, I brought Tom to meet the family. I was a wreck. My parents could be critical. Marcus? He was either your best friend or your worst nightmare. No middle ground. Mom practically ripped the door off its hinges. "My baby girl," she shrieked, engulfing me in a hug before turning to Tom. "You must be the man who stole her heart." Dad and Marcus were glued to a football game in the living room. Marcus launched himself up, his hand outstretched. "So, you're the guy my little sister won't shut up about." His grin was wide, genuine. He gave Tom a bone-crushing handshake. "And you must be the infamous Marcus," Tom replied smoothly. "Jill's told me quite a bit. The afternoon went better than I could have hoped. Mom dragged out the baby pictures despite my protests. Dad grilled him about his finances. But the real surprise? Marcus and Tom hit it off. Big time. They discovered they were both obsessed with the Patriots. Swore they'd been separated at birth. Marcus clapped Tom on the back. "I've been dying for a brother." All I got was this. He jabbed a finger at me. "Hey!" I protested. "It's true," Marcus said, laughing. You wouldn't have survived high school without me covering for you. True that, sis, he said, winking, and the whole damn table laughed. The next few months were a blur of wedding planning. Mom took over the flowers. Dad haggled with venues. Marcus? He appointed himself Tom's official bachelor party planner and drinking buddy. They were inseparable. I was thrilled. My fiancé and my brother becoming best friends. What could possibly go wrong? I was walking on air. The wedding was small, held in my parents' backyard. Fairy lights, wildflowers in mason jars. It was perfect. When Tom kissed me after we said I do, I actually believed in happily ever after. I actually believed that the missing piece had fallen into place. We moved into Tom's rented apartment, a cozy one-bedroom. Not ideal, but it was a start. We started a savings plan. A competition, even. Separate accounts to see who could save more for the down payment on a house. At first, it was fun. We'd compare takeout menus, have movie nights instead of going out, cook elaborate meals to avoid expensive restaurants. But about 3 months in, Tom started to chafe. We're turning into an old married couple, he complained one evening, flicking through channels on the TV. We're too young to live like hermits. I tried to reason with him, pulling up our savings spreadsheets. Think about it! A few years, and we could have our own place. Wouldn't that be worth it? He'd nod, agree. But then the Friday night guys' nights started. Marcus's influence. At first, I was wary, but Marcus reassured me, promising to keep an eye on Tom. I trusted him. After all, who better to trust with my husband than my own brother? And Tom would come home, happier, more affectionate, more understanding about the saving. So I let it go. Even started looking forward to those quiet Friday nights. A chance to read, to relax, to just breathe. A fool I was. A blind, trusting fool. A year into our marriage, I felt pretty good. My savings were growing steadily. I had just over $30,000 tucked away. Tom's? I had no idea. We kept that part a secret. But I assumed he was doing well. We were a team, right? Then came the fishing trip. It was a Thursday evening. We were eating dinner, a simple pasta dish. Marcus and I are thinking of going fishing this weekend, Tom said, casually. My fork clattered against the plate. Fishing? This weekend? I thought we were finally going to have some time together. You've been working late all week. He grinned, those eyes lighting up, like a goddamn kid at Christmas. Come on, Jill. I haven't been fishing in ages. It'll be fun. Just us guys, some beers, maybe catch something worth bragging about. As if on cue, a knock at the door. Marcus barged in, all swagger and smiles. He had a key for emergencies, though I was beginning to question the definition of emergency. Little sister, he boomed, spreading his arms wide. Please, please, pretty please, let your wonderful husband come fishing with me this weekend. He dropped to his knees, a dramatic flourish. I promise I'll take good care of him. No wild parties, no crazy stunts. Just 2 guys, trying to outsmart some fish. He gave me his best puppy dog eyes, the ones that had gotten him out of trouble since he was 5. I couldn't help but laugh. Get up, you idiot! You're 40, not 4. Not until you say yes, he insisted. Saturday morning, they were gone. Car loaded with fishing gear, cooler packed with beer. I spent the morning cleaning, trying to distract myself. By afternoon, I was bouncing off the walls with boredom. Then, an idea. Marcus's girlfriend, Sarah. We'd become friends. Smart, funny, and she seemed to genuinely make Marcus happy. Maybe she'd want to go shopping. A small splurge from my savings? Just some girl time? I grabbed my phone, dialed her number. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Hey Sarah, it's Jillian. Listen, the boys are off fishing, so I was wondering if you'd like to go shopping. Maybe grab some lunch? Silence. Then a hesitant voice. Fishing? Marcus isn't fishing. He's here with me. At my place. We're getting ready to drive to my parents' house for the weekend. He's actually in the next room right now. My blood turned to ice. I could hear Marcus's voice, muffled in the background. "Who's that, babe?" "Just my friend Lucy," Sarah replied, her voice strained. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, the truth crashing down on me. My husband and my brother lying. But why? Where was Tom really going? "Sarah," one whispered, barely able to speak. "Please, don't tell Marcus about this call. I need to figure something out. Just, please." "Of course," she promised, her voice tight with worry. "Are you okay?" "I don't know," I choked out. "I'll call you later." I hung up, and the room started to spin. Part 3. The Truth Unravels Tom's Laptop. It sat innocently on his desk, humming softly. We'd always been open about passwords. Or so I thought. His was simple, his mother's birthday. I'd teased him about being predictable. Now, that predictability was my only weapon. My hands shook as I opened the laptop, typed in the password. His social media accounts were still logged in. Careless bastard. Then I saw the name. Rebecca! The message thread was endless, going back months. Each scroll, each message felt like a physical blow. My world crumbling around me. "Can't wait to see you this weekend, baby. Your wife really bought the fishing story. Yeah, my brother-in-law's got my back. He's a legend." Ha! She's so clueless. Must be nice having such a trusting wife. They'd been meeting almost every other weekend. Hotels, her apartment, even weekend trips disguised as work conferences or guys' outings. The detail, the casual cruelty of their jokes about me, the intimate photographs they shared, it made me physically ill. But the worst was yet to come. A separate message thread. With Marcus, my brother, my protector, my best friend since childhood. She totally bought it again, Tom. Marcus had written just yesterday. "Your sister's as gullible as ever. Remember when we were kids, and I convinced her that ice cream grew on trees? She's never gotten any smarter. You're the best wingman ever, bro. Rebecca says hi, BTW. Says thanks for covering with Sarah too. Anytime. What are brothers for? Besides, this is way more fun than actually hanging out with my boring sister. Hit me up when you're back. Those strip club girls from last month have been asking about us." The messages went on and on. Plans for their guys' nights. Detailed accounts of their visits to strip clubs. Discussions about various women they'd met. Not only had Marcus been covering for Tom's affair, but he'd been actively participating in a lifestyle that would destroy Sarah if she ever found out. I read about how they laughed at my careful saving plans, how they mocked my dreams of owning a home. They joked about how I'd probably end up paying for everything anyway, since I was such a sucker. My own brother, calling me stupid, naive, boring. The same brother who used to chase away bullies when we were kids. Who'd held my hand when Dad had surgery 2 years ago. Who'd cried at my wedding. The room was spinning. I ran to the bathroom, vomited until my stomach was empty, my whole body shaking. When I could finally stand again, I went back to the laptop. Methodical precision. I forwarded every damning message to my email account, every cruel joke, every planned deception, every piece of evidence of their betrayal. I spent Saturday night in a strange, calm state of rage, methodically researching apartments, making calls. By Sunday morning, I'd secured a furnished one-bedroom across town, paid the deposit from my savings, signed the lease electronically. Tom came home around 3:00 in the afternoon, his face flushed and happy, radiating the smugness of a man who thinks he's gotten away with something. He carried a convenience store bag, a few frozen fish inside, a pathetic attempt to maintain his lie. "Hey, babe," he called out cheerfully. "You should have seen the ones that got away." I was sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me. Without a word, I turned it towards him. On the screen, his conversation with Rebecca, including their plans for this weekend's rendezvous. You know what's funny? I said, my voice eerily calm. I actually expected you to at least try to apologize. He straightened up, his expression hardening. Why should I? You want to know the truth? You've become boring, Jillian. All you care about is saving money and planning for the future. Where's the fun? Where's the excitement? Even Marcus says. Even Marcus says what? I cut him off. That I'm stupid? Naive? That I'm such a sucker for believing my husband and brother would actually be honest with me? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, maybe this is for the best. We're clearly wanting different things. You're right, I interrupted, standing up. I wanted a marriage. You wanted a convenience. I grabbed my pre-packed suitcase from behind the couch. I'm filing for divorce. Don't worry about your precious savings. You can keep them. Though I doubt there's much left after all those strip clubs and hotel rooms. I spent the afternoon moving my essential belongings to the new apartment. It was small but clean. Basic furniture, a view of a small park, my savings. The money I'd been setting aside for our future would now be my fresh start fund. That evening, I drove to my parents' house for their regular Sunday dinner. I knew Marcus and Sarah would be there. They always were, after their weekends with her parents. Mom was setting the table when I arrived. Dad was in his usual armchair. Marcus and Sarah were on the couch, looking like the picture-perfect couple. There's my girl, Mom smiled. We missed you at lunch yesterday. Yeah, about that. I looked directly at Marcus. How was your weekend covering for Tom's affair? The room went dead silent. Marcus's face turned white. What are you talking about? Dad demanded. I pulled out my phone, started reading the messages aloud. The cruel jokes, the strip club visits, the careful coordination of lies. With each word, Sarah's face grew more horrified. When I finished, she turned to Marcus, tears streaming down her face. Is this true? He couldn't even look at her. Sarah, please. The sound of her palm connecting with his cheek echoed through the room. We're done, she choked out. Everything! We're done. She grabbed her purse, ran out the front door, slamming it behind her. After Sarah left, I expected my parents to be shocked. Angry! Disappointed in Marcus. Instead, my mother burst into tears. Not for me, but for him. Look what you've done, she cried, rushing to comfort Marcus, who sat with his head in his hands. Your brother's relationship is ruined. I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. Are you serious right now? Did you hear anything I just said about how he helped Tom cheat on me? About the strip clubs? The lies? Oh, Jillian, Dad sighed, shaking his head. Boys will be boys. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Tom was just blowing off some steam, and Marcus was being a good friend. A good friend? I felt like I'd stepped into some bizarre parallel universe. He helped my husband cheat on me. He lied to my face for months, and now you're saying, you've destroyed his relationship with Sarah, Mom snapped. Was that really necessary? Couldn't you have handled this privately? Marcus lifted his head, his eyes red but dry. Yeah, sis. Real classy move. You just had to drag everyone into this, didn't you? I looked between them. My mother stroking Marcus's hair like he was a wounded child. My father giving me that disappointed look he'd perfected over the years. And my brother playing the victim as he always had. In that moment, something inside me broke, and something else formed. Harder. Colder. You know what? You're right. I should have known better than to expect any of you to take my side. Marcus has always been the golden child, hasn't he? He can do no wrong. Well, congratulations. You can have each other. I walked out of my childhood home that night, and I didn't look back. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly quick. Tom tried to claim half of my savings, arguing they were marital assets. We agreed to save together, he said in mediation, trying to sound reasonable. It was our joint plan for our future. But even his parents, who'd stayed out of the whole mess, told him to drop it. Don't make yourself look worse than you already do, his mother had said sharply. He withdrew his claim the next day. From mutual friends, I heard that Marcus and Tom were still thick as thieves. Without Sarah to keep him in check, Marcus had fully embraced the single life again. They were regulars at every bar and club in town, living it up like college freshmen instead of grown men in their 30s. Their social media was full of party pictures, groups of girls, and drunken adventures. Not that I looked often, but word got back to me. Funny how clarity comes when you strip everything away. Without the distractions of a failing marriage or family drama, I could finally focus on what I wanted, and what I wanted was to succeed. I volunteered for every challenging project that came through TradeSync Solutions. The ones other managers avoided because they were too complex, too risky, or too time-consuming. I took them all. I stayed late, came in early, and poured every ounce of my energy into making each project exceptional. My first major success came with the Anderson account, a client everyone had written off as impossible to please. I restructured their entire trading framework, created new reporting systems, and increased their profitability by 47% in the first quarter. The CEO himself called to praise my work. That success led to bigger projects. I developed a new risk assessment protocol that saved the company millions in potential losses. I streamlined our international trading processes, reducing transaction times by 60%. Each victory built upon the last, and people started to notice. "Jillian," my boss said, calling me in one day, "how would you feel about joining the management team? We need someone with your vision." The promotion came with a corner office and a salary that made my eyes water. I celebrated by buying myself a sleek black Mercedes. Not the most practical choice, perhaps, but I wanted something that would remind me every day of how far I'd come. 6 months later, I closed on my dream apartment, a 2-bedroom condo in the city's most desirable neighborhood. The mortgage payments were steep, but I could handle them. Every night, I would stand on my balcony, overlooking the city lights, feeling proud of what I'd built on my own. I hadn't spoken to my family in all this time. No birthday calls, no holiday gatherings, no Sunday dinners. Sometimes I'd see their numbers on my phone, but I never answered. The wounds were still too raw, the betrayal too fresh. Then, one random Tuesday evening, as I was reviewing quarterly projections in my new home office, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Few people had my new address. Through the security camera, I saw my parents standing there, looking older, more tired than I remembered. For a moment, I considered not answering, but something in their posture, the way Mom kept wringing her hands, how Dad's shoulders slumped, made me buzz them up. "Jillian," Mom started as soon as I opened the door, her voice trembling. "You look wonderful," she said, but her eyes darted around, taking in the expensive art on the walls. "It's really you are successful now. What do you want?" My voice was cool, professional, the same tone I used in difficult client meetings. I wasn't about to give them an inch. They exchanged glances, a silent communication I knew too well. A lifetime of coordinating around Marcus, of making excuses for his behavior. Dad spoke, his voice low. "It's about Marcus. We were wrong about him, about everything." I crossed my arms, leaning against the door frame. "Oh?" They launched into it. How Marcus had spiraled after Sarah left him. How his friendship with Tom had turned toxic, fueled by endless partying, drinking, hooking up with random women. How he'd started showing up to work hungover, then outright drunk. 2 formal warnings, one for being intoxicated at his desk, another for no showing an important client meeting. "He's been fired," Mom said, her voice breaking. "His references are terrible. No one will hire him. He's living in his old room now. He has no money, no prospects." Her makeup was starting to run. It was a rare thing to see her less than perfectly composed. "He's a mess," Dad finished, more bluntly. "What exactly do you expect me to do about this?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. The marble of the countertop was cool against my palms. a small luxury I'd chosen for myself when renovating the kitchen. A constant reminder that I had earned this. Mom's eyes lit up, a flicker of desperate hope. Well, sweetheart, we know you're in management now. At such a prestigious company, we were thinking. Dad took over, his voice smoother, more persuasive. Maybe you could find a position for him. Something suitable with a good salary. It doesn't have to be anything too demanding. A laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. A harsh, bitter sound that echoed in the pristine kitchen. Let me get this straight, I said, pushing myself off the counter. I needed to pace, to burn off the rage that was building inside me. You want me to risk my professional reputation, which I built from scratch, to give a cushy job to the brother who betrayed me? The same brother who helped destroy my marriage? Jillian, that was 2 years ago, Mom pleaded, her voice rising. People make mistakes. Mistakes? I stopped pacing, my voice deadly calm. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is being late for dinner. What Marcus did, that was a choice. Multiple choices, actually. He chose to cover for Tom's affairs. He chose to mock me behind my back. He chose his friendship with my cheating ex-husband over his own sister. He's family, Dad argued, his face reddening. Family forgives, Mom added, her voice softer. Family? Really? I felt the heat rising in my chest. A lifetime of suppressed anger finally finding its voice. Where was this family loyalty when I needed it? When I showed you proof of what they'd done to me? You sided with him then? Remember? You brushed it off, said boys will be boys. You're being unreasonable, Mom snapped, her voice regaining its edge. If you don't help your brother, we'll disinherit you. Everything will go to Marcus. I looked around my apartment. At the carefully chosen art on the walls, the expensive furniture, the expansive view, at the life I'd built without their help, without any of their help. I remembered nights spent eating ramen to save money, the sacrifices I'd made to climb the corporate ladder, the countless hours I'd poured into my work, all those years of proving my worth. Then I laughed again, genuinely this time, a sound of pure, unadulterated freedom. I don't need or want anything from you, I said, my voice ringing with conviction. I think it's time for you to leave. I walked to the door and held it open, a silent invitation to leave. I have an early meeting tomorrow. They tried to argue, to plead, to guilt-trip me one last time. But I simply stood there, door open, waiting. Finally, they gave up. Mom dissolved into fresh tears, Dad muttering about ungrateful daughters under his breath. As I closed the door behind them, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. A weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Through the peephole, I watched them get into their aging Volvo, the same car they'd had since I was in college. A symbol of their stagnation. I pictured Marcus in his childhood bedroom, probably nursing another hangover, waiting for someone else to solve his problems, like they always had. Last I heard, he was doing odd jobs around the neighborhood, mowing lawns, painting fences, anything to scrape together drinking money. Tom had eventually grown tired of partying with a broke friend and moved on. Karma, as they say, is a patient visitor. I poured myself a glass of wine, an expensive Bordeaux I'd bought to celebrate my last successful project, and walked out onto my balcony. The city stretched out before me, lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. I could see my Mercedes in its reserved parking spot, a symbol of everything I'd achieved on my own. Without them, without their approval, without their permission. Some might call me cold for turning my back on family, but family isn't just about blood. It's about trust, respect, and loyalty. Those who truly love you don't betray you, mock you, or try to manipulate you. They stand by you, support you, and celebrate your successes. The next few weeks were strange, a period of adjustment, a grieving process in a way. I'd severed a connection that had defined my entire life. The umbilical cord, finally cut. The silence was deafening. No calls from Mom, no emails from Dad, No drunken texts from Marcus, thankfully. Just nothing. I threw myself into my work. Obsessively. It was a coping mechanism, a way to fill the void. I worked late, came in early, and took on even more responsibility. I became known as the fixer, the one who could handle any crisis, solve any problem. My career was soaring, but my personal life? A wasteland. I tried dating, set up by well-meaning colleagues, swiping through apps, but it was all hollow. I couldn't trust anyone. Every charming smile, every flattering compliment felt like a potential trap. I'd find myself analyzing every interaction, searching for hidden motives, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was a detective in my own life, constantly investigating everyone around me. It was exhausting. One date, with a seemingly nice lawyer named David, ended in disaster. We were at a trendy wine bar. He was smart, articulate, and genuinely interested in my work. But as the evening wore on, I started to see cracks. He asked about my family. I gave him a vague, carefully curated version of the truth. I'm not very close to them. He pressed further. Why not? Everyone has family issues, but most people still try to make it work. That was it. The trigger. You don't understand, I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. They betrayed me. In the worst possible way. I can't forgive that. He looked startled, taken aback by my vehemence. Betrayed you? How? I clamped my mouth shut, realizing I'd said too much. I couldn't tell him. I couldn't bear to relive the details, to expose my vulnerability. It's complicated, I mumbled, looking away. He reached across the table, taking my hand. Hey, it's okay. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. But sometimes talking about it can help. That was it. The final straw. I snatched my hand away, stood up abruptly. I have to go, I said, my voice trembling. I'm not feeling well. I fled the bar, leaving him staring after me, a mixture of confusion and concern on his face. I felt like a monster, incapable of intimacy, forever damaged. Back in my apartment, I curled up on the couch, tears streaming down my face. I was alone, truly alone. I missed them. Even after everything, I missed my family. The familiar comfort of Mom's cooking, the corny jokes Dad used to tell, even Marcus's infuriating charm. But I couldn't go back. I couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. The trust was broken. Irreparably. Months passed. The silence from my family continued. I focused on work, on my friends, on building a new life for myself. Then, one evening, I got a call. An unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer it. Hello? I said cautiously. Jillian? It's Sarah, Marcus's ex. The woman whose life had been shattered by the same lies that had destroyed mine. Sarah, I said, surprised. How did you get my number? Marcus gave it to me, she said, her voice hesitant. I know. It's probably the last person you want to talk to, but I needed to tell you something. My guard went up. What is it? He's not doing well. Marcus, the first mean. He's been drinking heavily, lost his job, he's isolated himself. He's really struggling. That's unfortunate, I said, my voice flat. I refused to feel sympathy. He'd made his choices. Look, I'm not calling to ask you to forgive him or anything, Sarah said, her voice firm. I know what he did was unforgivable. But he's sick. He needs help. And why are you telling me this? I asked, my suspicion growing. Because he talks about you. All the time. He knows he messed up. He knows he hurt you. And he regrets it. Deeply. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I'm not asking you to save him, Sarah continued. But maybe you could just talk to him. He needs to hear it from you. He needs to know that someone still cares. I don't know, Sarah, I said, my voice wavering. The old feelings, the old loyalties were stirring within me. Just think about it, she said softly. Please. She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, staring into space. My mind was a battlefield. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut, to protect myself from further pain. Part of me wanted to reach out. Could I forgive Marcus? Could I ever trust him again? The answer, I knew, was probably no. But did he deserve to be left to rot? Did he deserve to be completely alone? I didn't know. I thought about the times when we were kids, the silly games we used to play, the secrets we used to share, the times when he'd stood up for me, protected me from bullies. Was there still a spark of that brother left inside him? Or was he completely lost? Sleep evaded me. Sarah's words echoed in the darkness. He needs to hear it from you. He needs to know that someone still cares. Cared? Did I ever care? Or was it just obligation? A sense of duty ingrained since childhood. The constant pressure to put Marcus first, to smooth things over, to forgive his transgressions. I tossed and turned, images flashing through my mind. Marcus teaching me to ride my bike, pushing me higher and higher until I was soaring, fearless, above the pavement. Marcus chasing away the neighborhood bullies who teased me for my braces and my hand-me-down clothes. Marcus holding my hand during Dad's surgery, his usually jovial face etched with worry. But then the images shifted. Marcus winking at Tom across the dinner table, sharing some secret conspiratorial joke. Marcus dismissing my dreams of owning a home, calling me naive and boring. Marcus siding with Tom after the affair, blaming me for being too demanding, too controlling. The weight of those memories, both good and bad, pressed down on me, suffocating me. I got out of bed, restless, and wandered into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of milk, a childhood comfort, and sat at the island, staring out the window at the city lights. What was I supposed to do? Reach out to Marcus? Offer him a lifeline? After everything he'd done? It seemed impossible, unfathomable. And yet, the thought of him spiraling further down, of him being completely alone, it gnawed at me. I remembered a Christmas morning, years ago. I must have been 10, Marcus 12. I'd asked for a new bike, a shiny red one with a basket and a bell. I'd saved up for months, doing chores around the neighborhood, scrimping and saving every penny. But on Christmas morning, there was no bike. Instead, there was a small, neatly wrapped package with my name on it. Inside, a pair of fuzzy socks and a gift certificate to the local bookstore. I tried to hide my disappointment, but my face betrayed me. Marcus saw it. He always saw everything. He grabbed my hand, pulled me outside. "Close your eyes," he said, his voice conspiratorial. I hesitated, then obeyed. He led me around the corner of the house. "Okay, open them," he said, grinning. And there it was. Not a shiny red bike, but an old, beat-up bike that had clearly seen better days. It was rusty, the tires were flat, and the seat was torn. "What is this?" I asked, my voice laced with disappointment. "It's your bike," Marcus said, his grin fading. "I fixed it up, best I could." He explained that he'd found the bike abandoned in a neighbor's yard. He'd spent weeks cleaning it, repairing it, doing everything he could to make it rideable. "I know it's not what you wanted," he said, looking down at his feet. "But I didn't have any money. And I wanted you to have a bike." I looked at the bike, then at Marcus. His face was earnest, his eyes filled with hope. Suddenly, the bike didn't seem so old and beat up anymore. It was a symbol of his effort, his sacrifice, his love. I threw my arms around him, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you. That bike, it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And it was a gift from my brother. That memory. It was a reminder of the bond we once shared. A bond that had been shattered, but perhaps not completely destroyed." I finished my milk, rinsed the glass, and went back to bed. But sleep still wouldn't come. The next day at work, I was distracted, unfocused. My mind kept wandering back to Sarah's call, to Marcus, to the ghosts of Christmas past. I tried to concentrate on the quarterly projections, the client reports, the endless stream of emails. But it was no use. My thoughts were consumed by the decision I had to make. I confided in Lisa, my closest friend at work. Lisa had been through her own share of family drama, and she was always a good listener. Sarah called me, I said, my voice low. She wants me to reach out to Marcus. Says he's not doing well. Lisa listened patiently, her brow furrowed with concern. What do you think you should do? She asked when I finished. I shrugged. I don't know. Part of me wants to tell him to go to hell. He deserves everything he's getting. And the other part? Lisa prompted. The other part remembers the good times, remembers the brother I used to know, the one who cared about me, who protected me. Lisa nodded. It's a tough situation. There's no easy answer. What would you do? I asked. Lisa hesitated. If it were me, I think I'd at least consider talking to him. Not necessarily to forgive him, but to understand. To get some closure. Closure? I scoffed. I don't think I'll ever get closure. Maybe not, Lisa said. But maybe talking to him will help you move on, help you let go of the anger and the resentment. I thought about Lisa's words. Move on. Let go. Was that even possible? I'd spent the last 2 years building a wall around my heart, protecting myself from further pain. To tear down that wall, even a little bit, it felt terrifying. But maybe, just maybe, it was necessary. I spent the rest of the day weighing the options. Pros and cons, arguments for and against. If I reached out to Marcus, the first risked being hurt again. I risked opening old wounds. I risked giving him the satisfaction of knowing that he still had some power over me. But if I didn't reach out, I risked living with regret. I risked wondering what might have been. I risked allowing the anger and resentment to consume me, to poison my soul. That evening, after work, I went for a run in the park. The cool air and the rhythmic pounding of my feet helped to clear my head. As I ran, I thought about all the things I'd lost. My marriage, my family, my sense of trust. But I also thought about all the things I'd gained. My independence, my success, my strength. I'd survived. I'd rebuilt my life from the ashes. And I'd done it all on my own. Did I really need Marcus? Did I really need his forgiveness? The answer, I realized, was no. I didn't need him, but maybe he needed me. I made the decision late that night, after hours of agonizing. I'd do it, then close the book. It felt like lancing a boil. I picked up my phone, my hand trembling, and dialed Marcus's number. It rang several times before he answered. His voice was groggy, slurred. Hello? He mumbled. Marcus, it's Jillian. There was a long pause. Jill? Is that really you? He said, his voice suddenly clearer. Yes, it's me. Wow, he said. I can't believe you're calling. Sarah told me. About what's been going on, I said, my voice tight. Yeah, he said, sighing. It's been rough. She said you wanted to talk, I said, cutting to the chase. I do, he said, his voice filled with a strange mixture of hope and dread. I have a lot to say, a lot to apologize for. I'm not sure I'm ready to hear it, I said, my guard still up. I know, he said. I don't expect you to forgive me. I need to say it. For my own sake, if nothing else. I hesitated. Okay, I said finally. I'll listen. When? He asked, his voice eager. Can we meet soon? I don't know, I said, my anxiety rising. I need to think about it. I need to prepare myself. Okay, he said, his voice deflating. I understand. Just, please don't wait too long. I won't, I said. I'll call you. I hung up, my heart pounding. I'd done it. I'd agreed to meet with Marcus. Now I had to figure out what I was going to say, how I was going to react, how I was going to protect myself. I needed a plan. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and preparation. I talked to Lisa again, seeking her advice and support. You need to set some ground rules, she said. Make it clear what you're willing to discuss and what you're not. What do you mean? I asked. Tell him you're willing to listen to his apology, but you're not going to forgive him right away. Tell him you need time to process everything. And tell him you're not going to tolerate any excuses or justifications for his behavior. Lisa's advice made sense. I needed to control the situation, to protect myself from being manipulated or hurt. I decided to write down everything I wanted to say. It helped me to organize my thoughts and to clarify my feelings. I wrote about the pain and betrayal I'd experienced. I wrote about the loss of my marriage, the destruction of my family. I wrote about the anger and resentment that had consumed me for the past 2 years. I also wrote about the good times, the memories of the brother I used to know and love. I wrote about the hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for some kind of reconciliation. But most importantly, I wrote about my boundaries, what I was willing to tolerate and what I was not. I decided to meet Marcus in a public place, somewhere neutral and safe. I chose a small coffee shop in the city center, a place where I felt comfortable and in control. I also decided to bring Lisa with me, not to participate in the conversation, but to provide moral support and to ensure that Marcus didn't try to intimidate me or pressure me. The coffee shop was bustling, the air thick with the aroma of roasted beans and the murmur of conversations. I chose a table in the back corner, near a large window that overlooked a busy street. It offered a sense of openness, of escape, but also a degree of privacy. Lisa arrived early, her presence a silent reassurance. She squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with understanding. "You got this," she whispered. I managed a weak smile. "Thanks. I don't know what I'd do without you." I ordered a black coffee, my usual. Lisa opted for a herbal tea. We sat in silence, waiting. The minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. My anxiety was building. My palms were sweating. My heart was pounding. I could feel the familiar tension in my shoulders, the tightness in my chest. I pulled out the notebook where I'd written down everything I wanted to say. I glanced over it one last time, trying to memorize the key points, the boundaries, the limits. Then I saw him. Marcus! He looked different. Thinner. Haggard. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale. He was wearing a faded t-shirt and jeans, a far cry from the impeccably dressed, charismatic brother I remembered. He spotted me and hesitated, a flicker of fear in his eyes. Then, he took a deep breath and approached the table. "Jill," he said, his voice hoarse, "thanks for meeting me." I nodded curtly. "Sit down." He sat across from me, avoiding eye contact. He fidgeted with his hands, his gaze darting around the room. Lisa gave me another reassuring squeeze, and then excused herself to use the restroom. I appreciated her subtle support. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, Marcus spoke. I don't know what to say," he stammered. "I've messed up so badly. I've hurt so many people." "You hurt me," I said, my voice flat. He looked up, his eyes filled with pain. "I know." "And I'm so sorry. More sorry than you can possibly imagine. Sorry doesn't cut it, Marcus," the first said, my voice rising. "You betrayed me. You lied to me. You helped Tom destroy my marriage." "I know," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "and I'll never forgive myself for it." "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why would you do that to your own sister?" he sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know. I was stupid. I was selfish. I was jealous." "Jealous?" I scoffed. "Of what?" "Of my boring, predictable life?" "No," he said quickly. "Not of your life. Of your strength. Of your independence. Of your ability to make something of yourself." His words surprised me. I'd never thought of myself as strong or independent. I'd always felt like I was living in Marcus's shadow, I felt like I was losing you, he continued. Like you were becoming someone I didn't know anymore. Someone who was too good for me. That's ridiculous, I said, shaking my head. That's no excuse for what you did. I know, he said. It's not, but it's the truth. He paused, taking a deep breath. I was scared. Tom made me feel important. Like I was still the cool, popular guy. Like I hadn't lost everything. Lost everything? I asked, my voice incredulous. What had you lost? Sarah, he said, his voice cracking. My job. My self-respect. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm truly sorry, and that I'll do anything to make things right. I stared at him, my mind racing. Was he being sincere? Or was this just another act? Another attempt to manipulate me? I thought about the boundaries I'd set, the limits I'd imposed. I'm willing to listen to your apology, I said, my voice firm, but I'm not going to forgive you right away. I need time to process everything, and I'm not going to tolerate any excuses or justifications for your behavior. He nodded, his face etched with relief. I understand. I won't make any excuses. I'll just try to be better. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the tension slowly easing. Then I spoke again. There's something else, I said, my voice barely a whisper. What is it? He asked. I'm worried about you, I said, my voice trembling. Sarah said you're not doing well, that you're drinking heavily, that you've lost your job. He looked down at his hands, shame washing over his face. Yeah, he said. I've been a mess. I've hit rock bottom. You need to get help, I said, my voice firm. You need to go to rehab? You need to turn your life around. I know, he said. I've been thinking about it, but I don't know where to start. I can help you, I said, surprising myself. I can find you a good therapist. I can help you find a rehab program. He looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. You'd do that for me? He asked. Yes, I said, but only if you promise me that you'll take it seriously, that you'll commit to getting better. He nodded, his eyes filled with tears. I promise, he said. I'll do whatever it takes. Lisa returned to the table, sensing that the tension had eased. She sat down beside me, her presence a silent support. The three of us sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of the past slowly lifting. Leaving the coffee shop felt surreal, like I'd just stepped out of a dream, or maybe a nightmare. I'd faced Marcus. I'd listened to his apology. I'd even offered him help. But had I forgiven him? The answer, I knew, was no. Not yet. But I'd taken the first step. I'd opened the door, just a crack, to the possibility of reconciliation. And that was enough. For now. Lisa walked me back to my apartment, her arm around my shoulders. You were amazing, she said, her voice filled with admiration. You were so strong, so composed. I don't feel strong, I said, my voice trembling. I feel exhausted. I know, she said. It's been a long day. You deserve to rest. Back in my apartment, I collapsed on the couch, my mind racing. I thought about Marcus, about his pain, his regret, his desperation. I wondered if he was being sincere, if he really wanted to change. I also wondered if I was doing the right thing, if I was being too naive, too forgiving. But I knew deep down that I had no choice. I had to give him a chance. For his sake, for my sake, for the sake of whatever was left of our family. I spent the next few days researching rehab programs and therapists. I made phone calls, sent emails, and gathered information. I found a reputable rehab facility in a nearby state. It offered a comprehensive program that included individual therapy, group therapy, and family therapy. I also found a highly recommended therapist who specialized in addiction and family dynamics. I called Marcus and gave him the information. I've done my part, I said, my voice firm. Now, it's up to you. You have to make the commitment. You have to do the work. I will, he said, his voice filled with determination. I promise. He checked into the rehab facility the following week. The weeks that followed were a roller coaster. I received updates from Marcus's therapist, Dr. Evans, a kind but firm woman who seemed to understand the complexities of our family dynamic. Marcus was struggling. The initial days of detox were brutal, filled with physical discomfort and intense cravings. He called me several times, his voice desperate, begging me to let him quit. I refused. You made a promise, I said, my voice unwavering. You have to see this through. You owe it to yourself, and you owe it to me. He cursed. He cried. He threatened to hang up, but I held firm. Gradually, the physical symptoms subsided. Marcus began to participate in therapy sessions, both individual and group. He started to confront his demons, to examine the patterns of behavior that had led him down this destructive path. Dr. Evans told me that Marcus was making progress, but it was slow and uneven. He had moments of clarity, followed by periods of intense self-doubt and despair. One day, Dr. Evans called me with some troubling news. Marcus had relapsed. He snuck out of the facility last night and went to a bar, she said, her voice grave. He drank heavily and then returned to the facility. We found him passed out in his room. My heart sank. I felt a familiar wave of disappointment and anger wash over me. Had I been wrong to trust him? Was he destined to self-destruct? We're not giving up on him, Doctor, Evans said, but he needs your support. He needs to know that you still believe in him. I hesitated. Did I still believe in him? I thought about the Christmas morning with the beat-up bike. I thought about the times when he'd stood up for me, protected me from harm. I thought about the spark of remorse I'd seen in his eyes at the coffee shop. Maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. I called Marcus. He answered on the third ring, his voice filled with shame. I messed up, he said, his voice barely audible. I'm so sorry. I'm not angry, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. I'm disappointed, but I'm not giving up on you. Really? He asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Really, I said, but you need to understand that this is your last chance. If you relapse again, I'm done. I can't keep putting myself through this. I understand, he said. I won't let you down again. I promise. He returned to therapy with renewed determination. He started attending AA meetings, finding solace and support in the shared experiences of others. He began to take responsibility for his actions, to make amends for the harm he'd caused. Part 16. The tentative steps of forgiveness. Months passed. Marcus remained sober. He completed the rehab program and transitioned to an outpatient therapy program. He found a job at a local bookstore, a quiet, low-stress environment that suited his newfound sobriety. He called me regularly, not to ask for anything, but simply to talk. He shared his struggles, his triumphs, his hopes for the future. Gradually, I began to trust him again. Not completely, but enough to let my guard down, to allow him back into my life. Just a little. He started attending family therapy sessions with me and my parents. The sessions were often tense and emotional, filled with long, simmering resentments and unspoken grievances. My parents, particularly my mother, were eager to forgive Marcus, to put the past behind them, but I was more cautious, more hesitant. I needed to hear them acknowledge their own role in the family dysfunction, their tendency to enable Marcus's behavior, their failure to support me when I needed them most. Slowly, grudgingly, they began to do so. They admitted that they'd favored Marcus, that they'd coddled him, that they'd failed to see the damage they were causing. Their honesty, though painful, was a turning point. It allowed me to release some of the anger and resentment I'd been holding on to for so long. One Sunday, Marcus invited me to lunch. Just the two of us. I hesitated. I hadn't spent any time alone with him since before the affair, since before everything fell apart. Okay, I said finally, but let's keep it casual. No pressure, We met at a small diner near his apartment. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his hands, avoiding eye contact. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice hesitant. "Thanks for inviting me," I replied. We ordered our food and sat in silence, the tension thick in the air. Finally, Marcus spoke. "I know I can never fully make up for what I did," he said, his voice low. "But I want you to know that I'm trying. I'm working hard to be a better person, a better brother." "I see that," I said, "and I appreciate it. I also want to thank you," he continued, "for helping me get sober. For not giving up on me. You did the hard work," I said. "I just gave you a push." "Still," he said, "I wouldn't be where I am today without you." We ate our lunch in silence, the tension gradually dissipating. As we were leaving the diner, Marcus stopped me. "Can I give you a hug?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I hesitated. A hug. It seemed like such a small gesture, but it also felt significant. I thought about everything we'd been through, the pain, the betrayal, the loss. But I also thought about the hope, the forgiveness, the possibility of healing. "Okay," I said finally. He wrapped his arms around me, holding me tight. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to feel the warmth of his embrace. It wasn't a perfect hug. It was awkward, hesitant, filled with unspoken emotions. But it was a start. Life didn't magically return to normal. The scars of the past remained, a permanent reminder of the pain we'd endured. But we were learning to live with those scars, to build a new normal, a new kind of relationship. Marcus remained sober. He continued to attend therapy and AA meetings. He started volunteering at a local homeless shelter, finding purpose and meaning in helping others. My parents became more supportive, more understanding. They stopped enabling Marcus's behavior and started treating me with more respect and appreciation. I started dating again, cautiously, tentatively. I found a kind and patient man who understood my past and accepted me for who I was. My career continued to thrive. I was promoted to a senior management position, a testament to my hard work and dedication. I bought a small house in the suburbs, a peaceful retreat from the hustle and bustle of the city. I was happy, not in a giddy, carefree way, but in a quiet, contented way. I'd learned to accept the imperfections of life, to appreciate the small joys, to find strength in adversity. Thanksgiving arrived. For the first time in years, I decided to host the family gathering at my house. I was nervous. I worried that old resentments would resurface, that the day would end in tears and recriminations. But I also knew that it was time to move forward, to create new memories, to celebrate the bonds that still held us together. My parents arrived first, bearing gifts and apologies. They seemed genuinely happy to be there, to be together. Marcus arrived later, bearing a pumpkin pie that he'd baked himself. He looked healthy and confident, his eyes clear and bright. We sat down to dinner, a feast of turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. The conversation was stilted at first, but gradually it began to flow more easily. We talked about the weather, about our jobs, about our plans for the future. We avoided any discussion of the past, any mention of Tom, any reference to the affair. But as the evening wore on, the tension began to dissipate. We laughed, we shared stories, we reminisced about happier times. After dinner, we gathered in the living room, sipping coffee and playing board games. Marcus sat beside me on the couch, his shoulder brushing against mine. "Thanks for doing this," he said, his voice low. "It means a lot to me." "It means a lot to me too," I replied. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. In that moment, I realized that we were finally healing. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough to move forward, to build a future together. The past would always be a part of us, but it wouldn't define us. As the evening drew to a close, my parents prepared to leave. "Thank you for a lovely Thanksgiving," my mother said, hugging me tightly. "Thank you for coming," I replied. My father shook my hand, his eyes filled with gratitude. "We're proud of you," he said. "You've come a long way." After they left, Marcus lingered. "I should probably go." he said, his voice hesitant. You don't have to, I said. You can stay if you want. He smiled, a wide, joyful smile that lit up his face. I'd like that, he said. We spent the rest of the evening talking, sharing our hopes and dreams for the future. As I looked at him, I saw not just my brother, but a friend, a confidant, a survivor. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about condoning his actions or forgetting the past. It was about accepting him for who he was, flaws and all, and choosing to move forward with him, to build a new relationship based on honesty, respect, and love. The price of loyalty, I'd learned, wasn't blind obedience or unconditional forgiveness. It was the willingness to stand by someone, even when they've hurt you deeply, to offer them a chance at redemption, to believe in their potential for change. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The ghosts of the past were still there, but they no longer haunted me. I'd faced my demons, I'd forgiven my brother, and I'd rebuilt my life. And in the end, that was all that mattered. I had a family again. Not the one I thought I needed, but the one that was real, broken and imperfect as it was.